is the... Oh, sorry, apologies, Councillor Pitt.
So I think there's an apology from Councillor Taylor as well. I'm not sure if that's
There
reached
is,
right,
thank
isn't
you.
it?
I had forgotten completely. Yes, we have had an apology from Councillor Taylor. Thank you. Then item 1 is the minutes from our meeting on the 24th of January. These have been circulated. Are there any questions or issues of accuracy that we need to deal with? If not, can I have a show of hands that they're a fair and true record of the meeting? All those in favour? Thank you. Right, we will sign those at the end of the meeting. Can we move on then to members' interest? Does anybody have an interest to declare? No? Okay. So that takes us to item 3, which is the final 2023-24 revenue budget and medium-term financial strategy, 2024 to 25 and then 2027 to 28, including the capital programme. And I think this is Councillor Mickelberg, aided by Cara Sutton.
Good evening, everyone. So the information was put through overview and scrutiny last week. Unfortunately, I was unwell, so I was heartened to be able to watch the stream. I was fairly interested to see that it took 2 colleagues to replace me instead of myself being present, and I was also very impressed with the way that Karen and Oliver presented the information. It was nice, it was clear, it was succinct, and I think we continue to make improvements as to the visibility and the clarity of the data that has been put forward. So I will stop talking. I will let Karen repeat that for the benefit of Cabinet colleagues, and then we can pick up the overview and scrutiny comments afterwards, which Tom will do, because obviously I wasn't in the room to do so.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you who were overviewing the scrutiny last week, I apologise because this will be very similar to what was said last week. So as Councillor Mickelberg said, we're presenting the proposed budget for next year and the MTFS for the following 4 years, both a statutory requirement and a critical element of the Council's governance and demonstration of financial control. I would like to bring to your attention a few points, highlights. We are presenting a break-even budget for 23-24, a significant improvement on last year's MTFS, where a deficit of £2.5 million was forecast. The improvement has been achieved through a number of items, most notably no rebaselining of the NNDR, which means that we are retaining 3.8 million of income. The improved government funding offer announced in the budget in December 2022, which has given us a further 1.1 million, the guaranteed 3% funding. New homes bonus, which we hadn't predicted to be paid in 23-24, has been confirmed as 1.3 million. So in total, our funding has increased by 6.2 million. Net expenditure wise, we did a review of our costs with all the budget managers. We removed any unapproved vacancies and included increases in income, for example, renting out the Pathfinder House offices. Through all of these reviews, we generated a 6.3 million reduction in our net expenditure. However, as you will all have seen in the press, energy and wage inflation has escalated throughout the past year, and we've had unavoidable pressures on our budgets. For example, temporary accommodation costs, where the cost of renting accommodation has increased faster than the subsidies we've been receiving. And our audit fees have also increased. So our growth bids pushed our costs up by 9.7 million. The increased costs include provision to pay staff a 4% cost of living increase. This is double the allowance that we put into last year's MTFS. And despite all our best efforts, our net expenditure has increased by 3.4 million. The budget is not risk-free. It is our best estimate of the cost of delivering services in the next year and the income that can be generated from our activities. Rolling forward to the medium-term financial strategy, we continue to have considerable uncertainty as the local government funding settlement was only a single-year deal. We've made the best assumptions we can for the following 4 years, but these are assumptions and they are not certain. So we've assumed that NNDR baselining will not occur until 25-26, meaning we continue to retain a greater share of this revenue in 24-25. There are indications new homes bonus will be paid in 24-25, and we have included this. The rebaselining of NNDR, which we think will occur in 25-26, will have a significant impact on our funding, which will drop from £12 million per annum to only 7.3 million in that year. We've assumed in the MTFS that this will be balanced by the payment of declining dampening adjustments, and this has been indicated in the settlements distributed by the council, by the government. Across all years, the MTF includes 8.3 million of dampening adjustments. We believe these payments are likely, but they are the highest risk elements in our budget. They give us £8 million of jeopardy. Given this uncertainty, it's clear the council needs to take measures to improve its financial sustainability and reduce its reliance on government and council tax funding. We've already taken measures to do this through the commercial investment strategy, which is very successful and continues to contribute to the revenue budget. However, the MTFS also assumes charging for some non-statutory services which will be introduced from 24-25, subsidising the revenue budget. In summary, we're proposing an MTFS that delivers a contribution to reserves of 4.7 million across the 5 years. This is a significant improvement again on the MTFS presented last year, which proposed a transfer from reserves of 8.3 million. Moving on to our capital forecasts have been reviewed and aligned with known plans and timings. Some investment monies, most notably Future High Streets and the Market Town programme, have been rephased to next year's budget in line with delivery plans. The MTFS contains no major new investments which would require external borrowings. This is due to the high rates of borrowings currently achievable and economic uncertainty at this time. Recognising the benefits being brought by our commercial investment strategy, we are planning a review and update to the strategy during 23-24, and we've included costs of doing that in our budget and MTFS. That's all I have to say, sorry.
Thank you very much. In which case then, unless Councillor Mickelberg has anything else to add, can I then move to the feedback from overview and scrutiny and then open it up for questions or comments? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you very much, Chair. You and I went to scrutiny last week. I thought it was a really good debate, actually. Some excellent questions from all sides of the chamber, really. And I think probably the first one is something I need to focus on. Councillor Harvey asked about increasing costs for planning staff, and I think I answered that obviously we're needing to make a lot of investment to get the service back on track, which I think we're doing. Some new posts potentially, as well as that. The new pre-app service I think is going well, and that's increasing the amount of income we're generating. Councillor Corley then asked a question about potential decrease in income, though, that it's not constant, and there's certainly some more work to do on just how we present that to members and track it. I think that's an ongoing project. Councillor Wells then asked about the community and health line. I think we need to probably just close that one and provide an answer to the panel and to Councillor Wells at some stage. I think he was concerned that there was a significant decline in future years. So that's something perhaps we just need to tidy up. Councillor Gray, of course, reflected on it and said that the government funding news seemed to be very good. He was cautious of the ambition to drive down expenditure, and of course, with the inflationary climate we're in at the moment, that will be a big challenge, as Karen has outlined. Removal of the Huntingdon redevelopment project from the capital budget, because obviously we're not anywhere near at the stage of really being able to progress that significantly. and there was some challenge about the fees and charges in Appendix 2, and that needs to match the rhetoric. But I was pleased to note that all members of the panel voted in favour of the budget. So hopefully that will ensure a smooth budget meeting on the 22nd of February.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. Did anybody have any comments or questions? Councillor Wakeford and then Councillor Davenport-Ray.
Thanks. Just on a specific, which Councillor Sanderson touched on there as well from the scrutiny discussion, Councillor Gray highlighted the relative lack of increase in the overall expected staffing cost lines into the coming years in the MTFS, and queried whether that was plausible given pay increases and potential expansion to the scale of what we're trying to do. I'm certainly conscious that, of course, getting more staff off contract and agency and into employment with the council is a more efficient way of and cost-effective way of employing people, which I think is picked up in that line. But I just wonder if we could just seek reassurance on the confidence we've got in the staffing costs line as it was picked up at scrutiny.
I think it's important to remember that the MTFS is a strategic placeholder rather than being something that is there for detail. So the award that's been made for this year, for the budget year, is double what we inherited, was the 4%. And what we should be considering is, as we think about the budget for the year ahead or the year after, so 24-25's budget, what we would look to be doing at that point is to be making the decisions around what remuneration would be, what would be adequate, what would be appropriate in detail as we approach that budget year, remembering that the MTFS excuse me, has taken the assumption that inflation will return to 2% and pay rises would return to 2%, because from a strategic planning point of view, when central government only gives you a year ahead, that's just a safe place to be. So don't be constrained with our imagination by the budget, but bear in mind that the future is very difficult to predict financially with the way that central government handles grant awards at the moment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mickelberg. Councillor Davenport-Ray.
Thank you. The ability of this council to present a 23-24 budget, which is break even, to me, frankly, is quite extraordinary. And I use that word specifically as if we compare ourselves against all the councils around the nation and the difficulties they're going through now. I put that down to the hard work of all of the service managers across the whole council and the months that they have spent thinking about the efficiencies in their service and smarter ways of working. But also I put that down to you, Karen, because with your fresh pair of eyes over the last year and your attention to detail, I think we've really taken all of those skills, added with a few things that have changed at the last minute. But overall, I would like to say thank you to you and to all of the service managers across the council.
Hear, hear. Please can we make sure that goes in the minute of the meeting entirely? Thank you. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you very much. Echoing Councillor Davenport-Ray's comment, I think just you mentioned, Karen, that the budget's not risk-free, and obviously we recognise that, but we're considerably lower risk, having not being in a position where we're planning to run down our reserves. So I'm really grateful that we're in that position. Some of that's through luck, frankly, or good fortune, as well as the hard work. But we can't rely on that good fortune ongoingly, and it's really encouraging to see that we're planning, not to rely on our good fortune ongoingly in the MTFS. I'm also really pleased that we're planning to review the commercial investment strategy. For me, that's a really useful tool, but I think we can get more than economic benefit out of it. So I'm really excited that we're going to be looking at all of the myriad of benefits we can get out of that tool to push forwards our agenda. So yeah, really delighted to see the content of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Any more comments or questions? In which case, then, if I may, from the chair, I was particularly heartened to see that having set a set of budget principles, which we agreed across council, which I think paved the way for us to then be able to present a budget. I was very pleased to see there was unanimous support in the meeting. I think that was incredibly helpful. I suspect we will still have debate when we get into full council. That would be entirely right and proper. But what you have before you is that you are asked to recommend to council the approval of the overall final budget 23-24 and the MTFS 24-25 through to 27-28. So I'm looking for a proposer, Councillor Mickelberg, a seconder, Councillor Wakeford. Sorry, there's more hands than I can watch fast enough. All those in favour to recommend this to council. Thank you. That's unanimous. We look forward to taking that through the cycle on the 22nd of this month. Thank you very much for that report. It's much appreciated. So we move on to the next item, if I can open my computer fast enough, which is the 2023-24 Treasury Management, Capital and Investment Strategy. And Oliver, welcome to come and join us. Councillor Mickelberg, are you going to do an introduction and then hand over?
So this is the second part. On the night we had 3, because we also included the Q3 review, and just for anybody who wasn't at that was also very healthy. So Oliver will now come through the more technical part of the Treasury management piece. And again, because I wasn't at the meeting, I can't carry the overview and scrutiny comments, so Councillor Sanderson will pick that up for me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I
Not
do
yet.
apologise.
It's a
I'm
bit
sorry.
clean. We'll hand over to the officer first. Oliver.
Evening. I'm presenting the Treasury Management Strategy tonight, along with the Capital Strategy and the Investment Strategy and the Minimum Revenue Provision Statement. All of these things are items that we need to approve under the SIP for guidance. So we need to approve them, send them on to council for approval. There's 3 things that I'd like to particularly point out in the Treasury Management Strategy. In section 4, we've got a new graph, which is the liability benchmark. That's something that shows us what the council is going to need to borrow over the next few years. So that's based on our current plans, and it goes right out to 2040, I think. So, and it shows what we need to borrow. The little mountain on the left-hand side is what we need to borrow, and what we've actually borrowed is the bigger line there. The gap between the two is what we've got to invest. So that's how we're managing to get 60 million in investments at the moment and get a good return on them. It also showed us that the diagonal line at the top there is not breached by the borrowing line, which is another thing that we need to look out for. I'd also like to mention our progress on the environmental, societal and governance factors. That's discussed in section 6.3. It's something that we're currently working on. We've got a money market fund which is particularly focused on those factors, which is an HSBC money market fund. But we're also going to start looking at other investments that we can do. But what we're waiting for really is the market to catch up with those products. So at the moment, we'll be looking for our Treasury advisors to give us some advice over the next year or two, possibly on a points-based system, about how we can invest and look to those factors for our investments. So that's something we'll be looking out for. And also in 6.5 in the Treasury Management Strategy, we've been looking at our counterparty limits, and we've lowered some of those in response to possible bad debts in the finance sector, so people not paying their mortgages, maybe. So we've lowered some of our limits on the single counterparties. So where we're investing with money market funds, which are basically spread across lots of counterparties. We haven't reduced those, but where we're looking to invest with maybe one bank or one council, we've reduced the limits. So we're trying to take some of the risk away. And that's my summary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tom, this is now you.
Thank you. I was so excited to get in there. So yes, another, I think, a very helpful debate. Last week at scrutiny, the chair, Councillor Gledo, started off actually by asking a question about the risk of a lack of specialist skills and asked how this would be mitigated. And I believe Oliver and Karen were able to assure the panel that an additional member of staff would undertake training to assist in broadening the knowledge from the officers currently undertaking that work, which is good. As we know, very difficult to find people without experience and skills in this area, as in many others. Councillor Gray was concerned about potential concerns about counterparties, and we were able to assure him that there was nothing to be of concern. It wouldn't require urgent withdrawal of funds. There wasn't an investment we've made with Thurrock Borough Council in Essex. As we know, they've going through some pretty difficult issues at the moment, but that actually been repaid on time, and there was no risk of investing generally that hasn't gone through the Debt Management Office, mainly on money markets. And Councillor Pickering inquired about the move to ESG products. And while the products are still very new to market, a compliance scoring mechanism will be introduced by Treasury advisors to help ascertain the right investment products for the Council's consideration. So panel were assured on those points, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. Any comments or questions? Councillor Wakeford?
Thank you. Just on a specific again, if I may, indeed again, following Councillor Pickering, I think the direction of travel there is absolutely the right one towards ESG products, but also sort of metrics in how we consider the products more generally, and certainly a topic I've touched on in scrutiny prior to us joining and forming an administration, and I'm pleased, particularly now we have a climate strategy as we do, that's an area of further work. So I think it was on the money there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davenport-Ray?
Yeah, just a bit further on that topic of ESG. I hope that in future we might be able to receive some bit more information on that scoring that we decide to use for ESG funds. When I look into investing at the moment, you receive ESG funds that may include petrochemical companies because they do invest in renewable energy. But on balance, we would need to decide how to assess that and whether that is a suitable investment. So I'm really glad that we're looking into this. And I think at scrutiny, you mentioned that you're going to go in and learn even more about ESG as well. So I'm really happy to hear that.
Thank you very much. Oliver, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we've obviously in the past used credit ratings and things like that for investing. So I expect that we'll start to use a scoring mechanism, but we're not sure what yet, and we'll be advised by our Treasury advisors on that. So I'm guessing that's what they'll add that into their advice that they give us on a monthly basis. But yeah, we're still really waiting for the products to come out onto the market that meet our credit requirements.
Thank you very much. As there are no other hands indicating, then I'm looking for a proposer for the recommendations. Councillor Mickelberg, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Wakeford. And then in which case, as written in your papers, you are being asked to make a recommendation to Council for the approval of 5 items: the Treasury Management Strategy Appendix 1, the Capital Strategy, which is Appendix 2, the Investment Strategy, Appendix 3, the Minimum Reserve Position Statement, Appendix 4, and the Flexible Use of the Capital Receipt Strategy, Appendix 5. All those in favour, please show. And again, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Oliver. We are making swift progress this evening. Thank you, colleagues. Right. In fact, we're making such swift progress, I can't open the documents fast enough to move between them. So the next item this evening is the business rates discretionary rate relief, which is item 5. And I think, Councillor Ferguson, this is a report that you are bringing to us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm sure we're all aware that we're at a time of recession in which businesses are struggling. And when businesses fail, two of the things they usually cite as a reason for failure are high rent and high rates. And I think there's a popular misconception that HDC determines either of those things. We don't, because the rent is normally set by a private landlord and the rates are set by central government. One of the few levers we do have to help businesses who are struggling is our discretionary rate relief policy. So I want to start off by saying that most of the rates that we collect go to central government, and a minority is held by the district council to deliver essential services. And you've heard about our budget tonight, and our rates income is one of the key sources of the money we spend to do good in our district. So whenever we're asked to discount rates, it's a decision we have to take very carefully, because what's happening is we're using taxpayers' money to subsidise private businesses and sometimes charities and other organisations. So what this paper is it's a clear set of instructions to allow us to make decisions in those cases. It's not a huge it's not hugely different from the previous rates relief policy. Some of the levels have been changed to reflect inflation, but I think we should congratulate Zoe, the officer who's done this, because it's a really clear description of how we apply that rate relief. And I think it's important that when we're asked to make those decisions, we do so in a fair and consistent manner. So I think it's an incredibly impressive paper. I'm pleased to support it. I think we should always just remember that every single time we offer rate relief, though, we do so out of the public purse. And so it's always a decision that we should take very carefully. And I'd ask you to approve this paper.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson. Did we have any comments or questions? Councillor Davenport-Ray?
Yes, given the market that you explained at the start and how difficult it is for small and medium businesses right now, do you see any opportunities for us in future to help support them through business rates?
So I think as you read through the paper, there's plenty of opportunity here for us to help businesses, especially those in particular crisis. So that opportunity already exists, and I would advise any business who finds himself in that situation to make an application as well, because we have appeals and there are special considerations. As I said before, it's a difficult decision to take, and we always have to consider whether helping an individual business, that money could be spent on perhaps a marketing campaign to increase footfall for all businesses in the town centre. So it's a difficult decision to take. It's one of the things I expected to be pushed rather harder on by ONS. But Councillor Wakeford and I have talked about this previously, and he has his hand up now, so maybe he has views on this. But I think it's something that we should consider in the future as we are financially able to do it. I think in our budget setting situation this year, it was a difficult situation to set our first budget in difficult financial situation. But as the opportunity arises, it's something I would like certainly to consider. So thank you for the question, Councillor Wakeford.
Councillor Wakeford? No, that's
So-
all right. Used to chairing,
coup
Councillor
there.
Ferguson.
Thank you. As you flagged, Councillor Ferguson, certainly as we've touched on before as well, I think this is an excellent iterative improvement. But certainly as we are adopting a new corporate plan in the near future, I'm certainly looking forward to opportunities to reflect how we might use this policy as one tool in our armoury to think more actively in terms of progressing our objectives in the context of that financial constraint that you've flagged. And I just wonder whether you agree, given the limited scope that there is around discretionary rate relief, of course, and you and the officer gave a very helpful, I think, explanation of how the different types of how the relevant related policies all fit together at scrutiny, but whether you felt there was merit in that.
Councillor Ferguson?
I think I'm happy to leave with that. Thank you. Would you like me to talk about comments from ONS?
That would be great.
Okay, so I think ONS panel was very supportive of this policy, and especially the way it's written. I think none of us are experts on rate relief, but after reading the paper, all of us were, so that was always really helpful. There was some concern from Councillor Albon about how this would apply to rural communities, and we went to some depths in describing how we have a special rural relief policy, which we discussed at a previous ONS meeting, in fact, the last cabinet, and where we can make special provisions for small post offices, petrol stations and public houses under a certain rateable value in towns of certain population. And in fact, I think it's true that rural businesses have even better protection than some of the town centre businesses, who obviously have the benefit of much higher footfall. And obviously, when you've got few businesses in a community, they're more central to the community's life. We had some questions on other types of relief. So if you look on the website at the moment, you'll see small business relief and empty property relief. Those are not discretionary relief. Those are government mandatory relief policies as well. So those are not they're still available to businesses, and we'll still advertise them and process them, but they're not part of this policy because they're not discretionary. I think Councillor Shaw asked us some questions about public conveniences, of which there are none that we offer any rate relief on in the district as well. So I think that the panel were pleased with this and happy with the clarity of the policy.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Are there any other further comments or questions? Because then, if not, the recommendation that we have, and I'm going to be looking for a proposer and a seconder, we have a recommendation to approve the business rates discretionary rate relief policy effective from the 1st of April 2023. So can I have a proposer? Councillor Ferguson, and a seconder? Councillor Pitt. And can we go to the vote then? All those in favour, please show. Thank you, and again, carried unanimously. Thank you very much, colleagues. That moves us on to the corporate performance report, which is item 6, and it's the Q3 report. And I think I'm right, Councillor Ferguson, is issue again?
It is. Thank you, Chair. So this is the fourth of these corporate performance reports, and as I told ONS, there's a certain feeling of deja vu about them because they don't seem to change very much, and it's generally the same very positive picture that most of the indicators are on track, with a few ambers and a few reds. I wanted to take this opportunity. I usually focus on all the positives, but tonight I'm going to focus on some of the ambers and some of the reds because I think those are the things which people's eyes are naturally drawn to. So with respect to key actions, which is the first category, we have 22 on green, 4 on amber and 0 on red. At the last previous ONS meetings, there were some questions about some of the things that we had marked green were the committee asked us to consider them a bit more carefully and said that some of them should be amber. So one of those is KA1, which was to declare a climate emergency, which was previously green. I asked that it would be set to amber for this meeting, and then at Cabinet last week, after the paper was published, we did approve the recognition of a climate and ecological emergency. So I think the ONS committee on the night agreed that that should now again be green. There's a kind of a bit of a theme running through this report. Lots of the ambers are to do with social housing and affordable homes, which I think is very important to this administration. Lots of those projects are delayed. So KA19 is delayed because of planning issues, but this is affordable homes that are that will be in front of DMC in April. So although that's delayed, it's progressing. Moving on to corporate indicators, we have 15 greens, 6 ambers and 3 reds. I want to concentrate on the reds, if you give me 1 second. No, I'm going to concentrate on the ambers. So PL13 is an important one. So some of the ambers here are more important, I think, than some of the reds. So PL13 is the average number of days it takes to process new housing benefit and council tax support claims, which is a concern. That's up to 25 days from 22 days. So it's taken 3 days longer than expected. And part of that is down to increased demand, but also that part of it's down to the fact that the team rely on receiving documentation via the postal service, and issues with striking and postal services mean there's been delays there, so that's understandable. But we're applying more resource to that. PL19, again, number of affordable homes is going to slip into next year. We're not going to deliver all the ones we said this year, but those will be delivered in the early part of next financial year. And once again, problems with supply chains and skill shortages have affected that. PL27 is about the number of food safety inspections, and we talked about this quite a lot at the licensing subcommittee. So we're down on what we predicted, but that's mainly because that team is operating under the auspices of the Food Standard Agency and their recovery plan, and basically they're being told what they want to do. So they're on target with the Food Standard Agency plan, but not delivering as many inspections as they said they would. So I think that's fine. With regard to red statuses, those I think, although they seem more serious, are less important. So PL1 is the number of homelessness preventions achieved, which sounds like a very serious measure, but I think if you look at the number of people in temporary accommodation, that's much lower than in previous years. And I think this is really indicating that there's not as much demand as we expected, which is good, but also that we're intervening much earlier and getting to people before they're in that crisis situation, which I think that's a reflection on the hard work that the team do. PL20 is the number, let me just check again. Oh no, that PL1 is the household recycled composted waste. So we're not recycling as much as we said we would, but that's a county-wide problem, in fact a countrywide problem, because we had a very dry summer. We're not generating as much green waste, which is reducing the number of recycling. And then PL26, which continues to be a concern, is the Good to Go scheme, in which we predicted we'd get 20 organisations through that. We've only delivered 3 this year so far, with a couple more in the pipeline. And I think some of the discussion at ONS was about the fact that lots of voluntary organisations, and I've talked to Councillor Pitt about this, are struggling to see the benefit for the work involved. I think people sign up to be parts of these voluntary organisations because they want to do good, and filling in lots of paperwork and accreditation isn't necessarily what they want to do. So I think we need to have a good look at that and see how much value it offers. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. And there's quite a lot of other councils offering similar schemes, but at the moment, not enough organisations want to go through it. And finally, looking at corporate projects, I'm going to concentrate on the single red tick here, which is in my portfolio area, which is we have failed to deliver the e-billing scheme. You might remember that was delayed because of the energy bill rebate scheme. And I talked to John Taylor, and we were going to talk about kind of kicking that off in the early part of this year. But now we've been asked by the government to deliver another energy bill rebate scheme, which is going to take the resources from that team and is unlikely to be delivered this year. So that's an overview of all of the projects and key indicators. If there's any questions, sorry, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Davenport-Ray.
Councillor Ferguson has highlighted quite a few of the ambers and the reds, but I'd like to actually draw your attention to one of the greens, which is, I find, quite exciting. KA4 is about protecting and increasing biodiversity within our parks and open spaces. And since the last report, that program has found a project officer and a project support officer and is well on its way. And not only does that give us some encouragement in increasing the biodiversity in our own council-owned lands, but also encouraging communities all across Huntingdonshire to identify their own spaces to improve the biodiversity. And so I'm quite happy to see that that's green.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davenport-Ray. Councillor Ferguson.
I also forgot to flag, when talking about good performance, PL23, percentage of planning application processed on target. After a long time in the ambers, that's now bounced into the green as well. So I think that's the result of lots of hard work and cause of celebration, I think.
Indeed, and it's always nice to do the celebrations, and thank you for making sure that we're focused on the areas that we need to be putting more effort or energy in because they are difficult and challenging. But I think it's really important, particularly for our staff who work very hard to achieve the work that they do, to focus on those achievements too. So it's always nice to see something move from an amber into a green area where perhaps it's been quite challenging to do so. Thank you. Any more comments or questions? Because then, Councillor Ferguson?
Would you like me to talk about ONS?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So there was two real comments, both from Councillor Gray. The first was that a number of the items in this report are numbers without targets, and he asked that we would perhaps look at setting targets for some of those numbers, because otherwise there's not much context, which is something I think we'll all agree with, and I think we're going to completely revamp this report and the indicators as soon as we've finished our corporate plan. So that's a priority after that. And I think we're all in favour of more explicit, easier to track monitoring data as well. The other comment was, so having disputed originally that we hadn't achieved the declaring climate emergency, Councillor Gray has flagged, I think it's KA4 or one of the fours. Let me see, the Market Town programme, which he suggests should perhaps be an amber. I'll have that discussion with Councillor Wakeford, who has his hand up.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. Councillor Gray was brief in his coverage of this at scrutiny, so I'll be brief as well. I will be less brief next month in the Market Towns update paper I'm bringing through scrutiny and to Cabinet. But now I think the challenge here was that, I mean, as quoted, that amber may be a more realistic indicator, as it was optimistic to claim the project was on track. We did discuss this when the committee, the overview and scrutiny panel, were so keen to do so prior to the following month's Market Towns update paper when I joined unplanned when they invited me up to discuss at the previous quarter's corporate performance report, if memory serves, and we did touch upon it there as well. I have certainly given the importance of this project to our administration and our residents, asked officers to be as cautious and conservative as possible in their self-rating of our progress on this. No pun intended. And the challenge back is quite clear, and as reflected back in the papers, this is a green rated project. As I say, I will expand next month.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. I'm looking forward to that expansion because there seems to be some rumours swirling about how much progress we are making. So I'm very keen to be able to put the facts before everybody. I think that's really important. Are there any more comments or questions? Because then, if not, then I'm going to move to the recommendations and look for a proposer and seconder. So let me just remind you, the recommendations in the papers is that Cabinet is invited to consider and comment on the progress made. And then, in fact, actually, we're just invited to consider. I'm getting carried away that you're going to need to vote. You don't need to vote in this particular one. You've considered and you've commented. So I will move on to the next item. You see, look, I'm getting carried away now. So item 7, I think you do get to vote on. No, you don't get to vote on item 7 either. So I'm just checking that the audience are also keeping track as we move forward. So this is the finance performance report for 2022-23, quarter 3. Councillor Mickelberg, are you going to introduce this for us?
Yes, I earlier tried to knock this off the agenda thanks to an inappropriate page break and a slightly odd order of ceremony. So, yes, this is the I've spoilt it as well. I've given the game away, haven't I? I've told people the content of the document. This is the review of the finance, the previous 3 financial quarters. And as I've already said, we're in a positive position, but I will let Karen, as the subject matter expert, give us more information.
Thank you, Karen.
Can I start my summary by pointing out a minor typo in the report? We apologise, but in section 3.1, the revenue section refers to an underspend. It should read an overspend. Apologies for that. So, as Councillor Mickelber has said, we're presenting the Q3 financial forecast for the current year. The trend of the Q3 financial report is generally consistent with what's been reported through the Q2 report. Overspends due to increased energy costs, higher staff costs in One Leisure and planning, and increased temporary accommodation costs. There's a significant change relating to financial interest receivable. When we presented the Q2 forecast review, we commented then that interest rates receivable were increasing, and we would review the forecast interest receivable calculations in the next review. We have now done this, taking into account the lower capital expenditure forecast as well, and the settlement of the People for Places loan. Since we presented the Q2 forecast, interest rates have continued to increase. Where we were receiving an average of 0.08% per annum interest, we are now receiving 1.76%. Whilst these figures sound quite low, on our average bank balance, the increase would generate approximately an extra £950,000 per annum. Taking into account these rates and the settlement upside on the People for Places loan, this wasn't in the Q2 forecast as the settlement straddled the period end and we hadn't had the settlement agreement from the Public Works Loan Board. Our forecast interest receivable in the year has increased by £1 million. We haven't released the full amount of this into the forecast as we've put aside a provision which we've now announced to staff, offering an additional staff reward. In the report, we've recorded this against the corporate finance forecast, so that's why the figures may look a little out of trend for those. I must mention that this windfall cannot be regarded as sustainable. The financial markets remain lively and we do not count on the interest rates remaining at such a high level. In summary, we're reporting a year-end forecast outcome for the revenue budget, which is £55,000 overspent against budget. This is an improvement on the Q2 forecast where we predicted an overspend of £400,000. Again, looking at capital, we've reduced the capital expenditure forecast for the year to reflect activities which will be delivered. The forecast spend is now £10.4 million, considerably lower than the adjusted forecast of the adjusted budget of £42 million. Apologies. This is due to rephasing some spend into next year, as I mentioned in the budget and the MTFS presentation. And those are predominantly the Market Towns programme, the Future High Streets and Hinchingbrook Country Park. We've also removed projects originally defined pre-COVID, but the plans have not been progressed. The largest one of these is the Huntingdon redevelopment. That concludes my summary.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions before we go to the roundup from overview and scrutiny? And I shall be looking to Councillor Sanderson to pick this up. No? Oh, so Councillor Wakeford?
If I may, though, particularly as it's not picked up in the scrutiny comments, but as was just touched on there around the rephasing and references what we were talking about on the previous item, there is a significant rephasing around the Market Towns programme here, and this again is a good news story in reference to the handle on the project that the officer team, as there is now a team, there wasn't a full team at the point we took over as an administration, but that the team have done in scoping out in more detail levels of spend, and in any programme of this nature you would not expect sort of a linear spend out the door. Sort of shovels in the ground at a particular point is highly correlated with disproportionate spend. So I think it's helpful to have noted that, and as I say, it is a reflection of hard work by the officer team that we have that measure of confidence, I think, in when the money will be spent.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wakeford. Councillor Sanderson, I don't remember, we had lots of comments, but was there anything from overview and scrutiny you wanted to draw our attention for?
There were a few comments, Chair. Councillor Gray, I believe, put a question about early repayment of a loan to people and people for places and respective PWLB loans, and were they still were beneficial for the council? And also, I think he inquired about whether there would be more caution exercised following issues recouping money in relation to CCTV shared service staffing. And he was assured that the and the panel were assured that the team were fulfilling both of those, and they were carrying out due diligence. Bit of debate about One Leisure anticipated income. That was from Councillor Corley. And panel were ensured that the figures were sustainable, improved sales management system, and robust plans to deliver a better service, among other things. So yes, not too many comments from the panel, but that were the gist.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. Any more comments? Because we're invited, obviously, to note the paper. Can I just then add from the chair, I have been privileged to see some of the responses from staff who are on receipt of the one-off payment we were able to announce. They are overwhelmingly positive, and staff have noted how much they have appreciated it and feel that it recognises the work that they've done, and it's come at just about the right time. So that's really nice to be able to report back to you. That doesn't obviously stop us continuing to work hard for our staff, and I know there were all sorts of ongoing conversations and aspirations around what we might do in future, but it was really quite gratifying to be able to see some of those comments back from staff, and I wanted to share those publicly because I think it's important you understand the impact that this payment really is going to make to our staff. In which case then, I'm going to move us on to the final item, which is the review of representatives on the outside bodies and drainage board. Thank you very much, Karen. Sorry, thank you for that. So you have a paper before you. I believe, I'm just looking for who's going to be presenting this. It says Democratic Services Officer. You expecting to present this, in which case? I was going to say, if not you or I might have to present this. You're going to present it for us. Thank you very much, Managing Director.
Thank you, Leader. I think that's called a hospital pass, isn't it? As most of you are aware, we have parts of our district which are covered by drainage boards. For those who are unfamiliar, it's connected with a bigger drainage activity that goes around the fens. And part of our obligation is to send representatives to those bodies that impact our area. There's also a secondary element to this, which is that we also pay a levy to those drainage bodies. And the report sets out those areas that this report focuses on. It doesn't cover all of them. And what you're being asked to do is to deal with a total of 7 recommendations to take you through. So, Leader, I'm happy to offer the board the opportunity to raise questions if they have any.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments at this stage? Councillor Davenport-Ray?
Sorry, that's me.
I'm really happy to see this report coming through. I think we have a lot of representatives on a lot of bodies externally across the district. And I'm looking forward to start hearing more back through a formal reporting process on what they're seeing around the district and how we're able to influence lots of other external organizations, especially things that have to do with our natural capital around the Great Fen and other environmental organizations that we're involved in. So I'm very happy to support this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davenport-Ray. Are there any other comments or questions? In which case I need to apologise to the Managing Director. I'd actually overlooked the fact they had my name against it. So apologies, Joe. I remember that when this came through overview and scrutiny, it was broadly felt that it was a good reflection on the issues that had been experienced by councillors attending over time, and that it was very much welcomed that by tying the work that we do on those independent bodies back through to our officers and finding a way of reporting through, that would bring support and strength to those attending, but also it would bring robustness to our processes overall. So it was felt to be a really positive way forward. I would particularly like to put on record my thanks to the small working group that undertook this work with the support from officers to actually be able to bring this forward. So you have before you a recommendation, which I just need to scroll through so I read it correctly from my screen, A to F, which is, I'm on the wrong page, that's why, bear with me. On the right screen and I'm on the wrong screen. Right, so A to F, you have a series of recommendations. I'll read them out just for the public record.
A to G.
Sorry, A to G.
Oh, sorry.
No, let's not miss G off the end because it's really important. So A to G, to implement a proper reporting process, to identify the relevant officers to take ownership of the relationship between the council, councillor and the organisation or board, to establish regular communication between officers and nominated councillors to ensure consistency and clarity, to develop a job description to establish clarity and consistency for appointed councillors, to set clear expectations for members and ensure they're able to fulfil their duties of the role when appointed, to review the list of organisations and boards appointed to, and to ensure that the appointments are non-political and are made taking ward and specialist expertise into account. So seeing as I should have originally reported on this, I'm happy to propose it from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Apologies, I think there was more than one. In that case, all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much, Council. Cabinet. In which case, that brings us then to the end of the evening. Now, I was a bit previous last month. Am I allowed to announce this month? Yes, I thought
Warm up.
it was a warm-up last month. So for those of you who've been with us over 2 months, last month I put on record that this was our last meeting when we would be joined by Kate McFarlane, who is moving on to a new post in the Combined Authority, and the Managing Director, who is looking forward to a bit more time on her allotment, although I have a feeling that the world has some other things in mind for you in terms of your time as you enter early retirement. So I'd like to put on record my personal thanks to both of you. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with you, particularly over the last 6 months. Where I've got to know you much better than perhaps previously. You will be both greatly missed by this administration, by your colleagues and by fellow councillors. You both leave big boots to fill, but I know that we'll work very hard to make sure that those who are taking over as interim and those who are coming to join us will be well looked after. But we'd like to wish you all the well. We will embarrass you further when we get to full council, no doubt. You're on notice. Yes, I can see the looks of, oh, no, you don't. But I would like to put on record, and I'm going to embarrass you again, because last month we clapped as a way of saying thank you. We're going to do it again this month. Thank you. In which case, then, that concludes tonight's evening. We're going to be able to turn off the live feed and say thank you very much.